Hey aspirants, welcome to Insights I Can initiative. I hope that all of you are writing answers regularly, at least till mid of January, so that you'll be well prepared once you clear your prelims in the 2025 attempt. So do keep writing answers and stay with us with very valuable content. So with this, we'll begin our first topic of the day. So this topic is basically about a very popular author in India called Yuval Noah Harari. So he's a internationally acclaimed author who has penned down three important, or we can say four important books, which has a huge readership called Homo Deus, Sapiens, and 21 Lessons for 21st Century, and the latest of his books being Nexus. So, if you are interested in reading any non fictional books to help you develop varied perspectives, these are very well recommended books by many successful people in the country. So this was basically an interview that was published in Indian Express about the views of Yuval Noah Harari and on some very important topics. And this discussion and this interview was very informative to us when we looked into it from ethics and essay perspective. So there were many dimensions that were discussed here. We'll quickly pick up each one of them and see how they are useful in our answer writing. So one of the first question asked to the author, asked by the interviewer to the author was the meaning of power. So what is power exactly? Because of late, you American elections have taken place, and there's a new president-elect, Mr. Donald Trump, coming to power in January onwards. So there are new dimensions of what is the meaning of power. So Yuval Noah Harari's viewpoint on power will quickly discuss here. So he has told that what is the meaning of power? That is, power is something which gives a lot of advantage to an individual over others. And using this powers, there can be two outcomes. Okay, what are these two important outcomes? One is once a person gets power, they can use this power and make sure they gain more power. This dimension is very crucial here. Using power to gain more power is one aspect, or the individuals can also use power for the purpose of bringing meaningful changes in the society and making world a better place to live in. So the two usages of power were discussed here, and the author tells that Yuval Noah Harari tells that the first dimension is a huge threat to democracy. So, how is he telling this is a threat to democracy? So, democracy is about a kind of power given by people to a particular government. So, this power may be retained for 4 or 5 years as per the constitution. And if the government is good enough, has kept up its promises and helped to fulfill the aspirations of people, it will be considered a good government. But in case the government had made bad choices and has not led to development, people may withdraw this responsibility or power given to the government. So, in reality, most of the time when we gain power, either the political parties or many of the time the political leaders, they use this power that people give them and try to become even more powerful in the society. So they're not ready to give up power here, and that helps them, or this power given to them will perpetuate in concentration of power in their hand to make sure they always stay in power. So remember this dynamics about how power is used and how it is misused to stay in power, and this dimension leads to our next other points of discussion. So you'll be able to relate it in the next slides. So the second concept here, the author was questioned about is respect to the concept of populism. So populism is a very popular, it's an ideology where people believe that the whole society is divided into two groups. Okay, one group is where there are pure people. So these are the people who are well intentioned and clean in their behavior. And the other set of population is the corrupt elite. That is those who are having bad ideas and are basically focusing on concentration of powers in the hands of a few. So this ideology of populism believes that this all human interactions, whatever the kind of interactions we are doing, it is to establish power. So they boil down to the extent of telling that when two people are communicating, we actually try to prove our own point in the argument, try to put our own viewpoint, try to deny what the other person is telling, or even when we are trying to accept what the other individual tries to tell, we are basically trying to show how powerful we are. So at the end of the day, populism as an idea tells that the whole conversation or interaction between the public is to establish power. And when doing this, they leave behind humans and institutions. That is, this idea is about, when we talk about establishing power, people don't think the genuinity or truth. They just want to establish power, and for this, they are ready to go to any extent. They may also ignore the truth and facts that are existing in the society. So, this is a kind of pessimistic notion, we can say. So, because of this pessimism, people would not trust each other, right? So everybody believe that truth is ignored in the dimensions of power, and when we ignore truth, there will be no trust, because every individual believes that the other person is doing a particular interaction just because of establishing power. So this leads to something called erosion of trust in the society. Ultimately, it results in nothing but collapsing of societies which is built on trust, and ultimately collapsing of democracy as an idea as well. So remember, the idea of populism can be used relevantly in your essay topics. So the next dimension of this interview was about what would be the future of democracy and the idea of truth. So this is a continuation of the previous two topics we have discussed. So it is telling that democracy as an ideology also is based on trust. That is, people believe that after 5 years or before the elections, people believe that a party will fulfill so many promises. They are going to give us many benefits and opportunities for growth. And with that trust, they vote a particular candidate to election. And at the end of the term, they again participate in election to choose their candidate, which itself is a belief that people are trusting the system of democracy. So humans also, they have a trust, yearning for truth. So doesn't mean that when democracy is established, this trust needs to be based on fake principles or false imperative. It also needs to be based on truth, because at the end of the day, humans always languish for truth. So if we don't know the truth about life, let's say, we cannot be happy, as we don't know what is the source of misery for us. So when we don't know what is our life, why we are unhappy, without knowing that true reason for our unhappiness, we can never find solutions. So in the same way, let's say there's a very powerful person who doesn't know what exactly is the truth. When they try to control the institutions of government and they try to solve wrong problems, the solutions are not going to be genuine or even making any difference in the lives of people. So democracy and truth needs to go hand in hand. That is, those who take control over democratic institutions need to come to terms with truth and ensure that the world does not believe in fake principles or fake promises. So we need a generous view of human beings. So basically, he's negating the idea of populism, telling that human interactions not necessarily always have to be for establishment of power. There can be a humane angle to human interactions as well. So the next important concept he tells us that how do we identify what is truth? That is, in reality, what do we get to know? How do we get to know that this is true and this is false? So for this, he tries to talk or bring the notions of religion and spirituality, where he popularly discusses a very beautiful concept called religion scales, spirituality doesn't. So religion scales by the meaning, religion by his, according to his discussion here, is basically referring to religious rites, certain practices we do as a part of religion. At the same time, it also represent beliefs of the people. So that is how religion gets enforced. On the other hand, spirituality is talking about bigger question, or let's say more relevant question, as in what is the meaning of life altogether, what is the reality for which the world is existing, or let's say even what is good or bad in a particular decision. So when we are this is a very difficult way of, or let's say difficult adventure about finding answers to this difficult questions. So when people get tired to find answers to these difficult questions, they take the help of religion. That is, religion has already answered many of these questions for us. And unfortunately, people are of the opinion that whatever religion has told about these questions, they are undefeatable or unquestionable. So this is where we try to consider religion to be a doctrine that cannot be changed, or these spiritual answers we need only religion to answer, because humans are basically tired of finding answers for themselves. So once it goes into the fold of religion to answer these questions, it takes the arena of unquestionability. So he tells that many of the religious practices and rituals are a result of our inability to get answers to these questions. So he's telling that religion is something we are so attached to that we lose the whole essence of why even we embrace the religion, by completely forgetting the spiritual path. So he comes to a conclusion here by telling that many a times the ideas of religion is practiced in places of worship, right? We have religious ceremonies, festivals, worship going on in religious places, which have to be a pure area where a person can connect to one's spiritual ideas. So they are considered to be the holiest places on earth, and it is the most spiritual places as well. But if you see, the other side of the coin tells that most of the battles in the world currently are being fought in these holiest places, with the idea that religion needs to be protected and the idea of ownership over these places. So he questions the people who read the article that how come these places, which actually had to be the places of worship, actually had to be the most purest places on earth, is now suffering so much from the bloodshed that is going on. So this discussion would be very relevant for us to write in our answers on war, or idea of communalism in many countries. And anytime we talk about establishing peace in the world, we need more spiritual bent rather than just religion taking the center stage. So the last argument here was a very relevant one. It is related to the future of inequality. So the future here is with specific reference to artificial intelligence. So he tells that artificial intelligence as an idea is doing nothing but deepening inequality. So why is he telling it? Because only few countries are leading in the AI revolution that is taking place in the world. So this AI revolution brings a lot of advantages only to these few countries, dividing the advantage to other countries which are not ready for the race. So not only the few countries, we can tell that there are only few people who are making life changing decisions for the whole world. Let's say there are leaders in Silicon Valley, like any of the corporate giants or tech giants that we can talk about. They are the ones who have taken many decisions for everyone in the world. But the question is, who are electing them? Are they elected? The answer is no. So, when the important decisions of the country are taken by unelected people, the world in future is definitely not going to be an equal world, or AI is definitely not a equitable tool. So with this, the argument I felt was very fruitful. So do make notes of it in your essays and ethics with respect to future of inequality and all the subtitles I've used here. And this brings us to a very powerful quote told by Mahatma Gandhi, which you can write for 10 marks, and we'll be discussing that in our next episode. So the question is, the day the power of love overrules the love of power, the world will know peace. It was told by Mahatma Gandhi ji. You can take the question as, what does this quote mean to you in the present context? So do write the answers, show to us in the comment box, so that you can compare your answers with others and also with the model answers that we discuss in the episode. So coming to the second topic of the day, it is about ethics, a topic related to insurance ethic based on an incident that took place in United States. So, if you recall, last week, or I think last week, there was a very fatal murder that took place in US, and the person who was a victim here headed an important insurance company, a private insurance organization in United States. And many of the investigations are pointing fingers towards the idea that this insurance company has basically tried to reject many genuine claims. When many genuine claims were made to take insurance money for the treatment of the patients, they have rejected these claims on many unauthenticated grounds, and the people here have lost life due to lack of funds that they had pledged for years to secure their health. So one of the persons who lost their near and dear ones is suspected to have committed this as an act of revenge. This was known based on the words that was mentioned in the area of the death scene. So this may be an isolated incident in USA, but as you see, this kind of news which of death usually draws a lot of sympathies from the public, telling that this is an unfortunate incident. But in US, the idea is different. If you see this article, it was published in New Indian Express. United Healthcare CEO's shooting opens door for many to vent frustrations over insurance. So people are taking this as an opportunity and are telling in social media as in how they have not got the due share when they have paid a lot of premium amount, secured their life, only to get to know that their insurance claim has been rejected, and this has led to loss of many precious life in the country. So where this particular topic would be relevant to us is from essay perspective. So we'll quickly see what are the essay nuances, or sorry, ethical nuances we can get from this topic. So what are the issues under scanner here? The first one is basically lack of empathy. So, as we know, corporate entities, though they are run on financial motives, many a times they need to also have an empathetic angle where those who are genuine and their needs are very much true, they need not be denied the claims because there is a loss of life that is at risk here. So, lack of empathy is an example of such insurance companies. The second one is about public trust. So we have seen in the previous article also about trust. So public trust is like these kind of institutions, general public pays a huge amount as premium with the trust that if something happens or some medical emergency happen, we can fall back upon our hard earned money. But when such claims get rejected, public may stop trusting any of these organizations, which is a kind of important for management of many social relations in the society, we can tell. So remember, this episode is also leads to erosion of public trust. So the third one is we can bring in the deontological approach here. So even in your questions on deontology, this particular example could be relevant. So what is it about? As it is seen, deontology believes in the means rather than the end of a particular incident or an outcome. So if you see, for the insurance companies, end results may be making profit, but they when they utilize unwanted means or unethical means like this, even if they make many how much ever amount of profits, it's not going to be ethical. So even in deontology, you can quote the example of this particular instance in USA. So in addition, there are two more values or ethical issues associated with this. So this violates something that we call as a social contract theory. So how is it impacting social contract theory? So many of the time what happens is corporates, that is the companies, they own a kind of responsibility towards the society, and society places trust in this government. So this social contract theory is completely violated in this case, as whatever the public gave the work to the companies to secure their health, the company has failed to do that. So in such a case, it's a violation of social contract theory as well. So the fifth one here is manifestation of social anger. So as we see, many of the time there are many popular movies which have come on this theme where you'll see that the main protagonist or hero goes and gives punishment in the form of killing to those who are corrupt. So why is it happening? Because they feel that government is silent on all these corrupt activities, it is impacting the local public. So when I can take this in my hand, I can go and kill this kind of officers. So you can recall many movies on this plot. So this whole episode in USA also is pointing out to the idea that social anguish or social anger, when the government doesn't respond to it, it gets manifested in the form of these kind of public outrages and killings, which is definitely unethical from the side of the public. But without government intervention, these kind of activities are bound to happen. So the last one is, you can also quote this in corporate ethics. So companies have a responsibility and have ethics to follow, and this has been violated in the case. So remember this case study of United Healthcare of USA and the CEO being shot dead for ethics answer. So this brings us to a very important question. You can note this down for your quote on leadership. So leadership is not about being in charge, it is about taking care of those in your charge. So it definitely is pointing towards empathetic administration. So even in this case, this quote can rightly be utilized by telling that how, as a chairman of an important company, giving a genuine leadership to the public and giving or building the trust is something that had to be done. And this allegation is leading to many social unrest that is happening in the society. So remember this quote for our GS paper 4. The next topic that we will discuss here is a example. Let's say this is an example using which you can start your answers with. Okay, so if you see the heading here, Brazilian vet hopes to rescue heron with cup struck in the throat. So this article was basically covered in Al Jazeera newspaper, and also it was popular on its social media handles. So in this, you can see that in this image, there is a heron that is sitting, and this part, or let's say this idea here, this image is nothing but a plastic cup that is falsely ingested by this bird. And the author, the veterinarian who has clicked this image, tells that this would choke the bird to death, because whatever food and water it consumes, it doesn't pass through this, and probably for 5 to 6 days or a week, the bird may die a natural death. So this image, or this particular idea of a bird or a heron whose throat is struck with a plastic cup, is a significant example or symbolic idea of where humans have taken the concept of pollution, or let's say plastic pollution in particular. So I hope you can use it as an example for which kind of questions. The governments have of the world have recently wounded up this plastic pact in Busan without an agreement over how to end plastic pollution in the world. So these kind of, let's say if you get any question, what could be the role of India in bringing an end to the menace of plastic, as India has banned single use plastic, in a similar way can we do it in the world as well? What solutions India could give, or why plastic pollution as a concern is very dangerous, why world needs to act upon it, or any questions on plastic pollution, remember to use this to begin your answer with. So as you know, this topic of plastic pollution is a very simple one. Most of the people who prepare for this would be able to bring statistics like this, where 400 million tons of plastic waste is generated, 9% of them are recycled. This would kind of be a traditional way of starting your answer. So how about you start your answer for these questions with topics like a heron was recently found whose neck was struck with a plastic cup, and this shows the intensity of pollution we have ended up in. At the same time, there are many examples which have happened in the recent past where a seahorse is seen to be moving using an earbud as a vehicle to move in the water. We see that hermit crabs are using plastic bottle caps to cover themselves when they are moving on the sand. So all these instances are showing us that human pollution is not impacting us alone, but it's also impacting the other sections of the whole other sections of environment, which have hardly contributed to the concept of pollution. So this would definitely fetch you some extra marks in your answer writing, because it kind of builds curiosity in the evaluator, as in when did this incident happen, and they would probably try to be very interested in reading your answer, which would definitely have a positive impact in your answer writing and also the marks that you are getting out of it. So the next topic would be a particular, we can say, article from The Hindu itself. So basically, the article is talking about the concept of inequality and the place of charity in an unequal society. So, the article is a very generic introduction of a recent episode where Warren Buffett, who has around $121 billion worth of wealth in his name, has pledged to give to charity somewhere around $52 billion. So, this idea needs a lot of analysis because we can quote this as a positive example for generosity. We can use this as an example for our GS paper for ethics about leaders who inspire to give equality of opportunity. But there are many other analysis we need to do here. That is, in many of his own books, Warren Buffett has told about luck has helped some people to get rich. Luck is a factor because of which people get richer, and he in many of his books has also told about uh, United States, okay, the country which is male, United States, a country that is economically richer, and Warren Buffett here, who was born as a male white American, has got many opportunities to excel in his life, which many of the people who, let's say, was a female in USA might not have got, or even an African American might not have got. So it is his luck that he was born as a male white American, and he started to prosper because US economy started growing very well, and as a result of this, he is able to amass so much of wealth, and he has not done anything on his own side. So he tells that because of this luck egalitarianism, we need to donate as much of amount as possible, because I had the opportunity, that is here the charitable or philanthropist has the opportunity to create wealth for himself, but by donating or by giving charity, he is making sure that he is equalizing opportunities to the public, because they are not lucky enough to become rich or create wealth for themselves. So the question here is inequality a question of luck? That is, can we just tell that some people are not lucky, that is why they are economically poor, so let us not do anything to improve their life altogether? So here the private philanthropists believe that the problem they are trying to solve is something that is a result of a same coin here. That is, the philanthropists tell that we will donate money because there is a lot of inequality in the society. If you see, the flip side of the coin is that inequality is a result of the same entities who are donating money now. So this is a paradox that has been answered in this particular article. So, what is the reason for inequality here? In another argument, another author in the same article tells that there are different reasons for inequality. One of them is place of birth. That is, differences in income between countries also matter. When a person, let's say, is born in a rich country, the chances of him or her becoming rich is very high compared to a person who is born in, let's say, an emerging market economy, or let's say even a underdeveloped or a poor country. So with this explanation, can we again tell that that is the reason of inequality? So we go further to the argument here, that is equality or equity. So wealth donation to boost others' opportunity is an idea here, correct? So what is charity here? Basically, people are donating their wealth to boost the opportunities for others. So what we are basically trying to do, we are trying to equate the outcomes. That is, what will be the outcome of charity? The society is expected to be equal because the one person had a huge wealth, they have given it to others, so the society will be equal. So we are basically focusing on what? Equating the outcome of a particular activity, right? Or outcome of opportunities. On the other hand, there is another argument which tells that instead of bringing equality when it comes to the results, how about equalizing opportunities itself? equalizing opportunities itself means you don't need to provide charity at all, because when we give equal opportunity to everyone, people will grow on their own means, and this unequal distribution of wealth will not come in the first place at all. So remember the concept of wealth, it's donation to bring, to equate the outcome of the whole process, versus in the beginning itself, if you create opportunity, you would not concentrate wealth and also lead to equitable distribution of resources. So with this, we'll move to the next concept discussed in the article based on charity. That is, what is he talking, the author talking about here is the process which led to concentration of wealth itself needs to be questioned here, correct? That is, what all happened here to which led to inequality in the income, that itself needs to be questioned. So I think for those of you who have referred NCERT textbook, this pop cartoon would be quite familiar, because if you see, economic growth is here, and as we flicker down, the distribution is hardly coming to other countries, right? So with this, what is the reason this economic concentration of wealth took place needs to be questioned. So there's a small analysis the author had told, that is, in the post Second World War era, the world was, or the wealth distribution was largely equal, it was quite well. But later we got the idea of neoliberalism. So, what is the concept of neoliberalism? It was put forward by Ronald Reagan and Margaret Thatcher, who talks about concentration of wealth, or basically, instead of glorifying this, they talk about trickle down approach. That is, if wealth gets concentrated in a few hands, or if few people become rich, they impact the whole economic cycle, and everybody in the economy will get developed. But here, even in India's case, we see once we adopted liberalization as a policy, we did see a record fast growth in our GDP. But what about the distribution of opportunities and resources? It is unequal even now. So the author here is nothing but criticizing this model of economic development popularized by the Western worlds from quite some time. Okay, so the conclusion here also talks about not luck factor. So there is a concept called luck egalitarianism, where just by luck some people get rich and they should distribute the resources to bring equality in the society. This is countered by telling that inequalities are not a result of luck, but it is based on certain policy choices that a country makes, and also certain interventions that the country doesn't make, which it had to be made to bring down inequalities. So there is a case study given here with respect to the Amazon group, where Amazon as a country generated money for owners. That is, it did make huge amount of money for owners. But if the neoliberalism worked, this money had to be trickled down. But if you see, the workers of Amazon are not so well off. Workers are suffering through stagnated wages and many a time harsh working conditions. So this example, or this whole discussion, you would find it apt to be using in a essay that had come in 2023 with this topic. That is, a society that has more justice is a society that needs less charity. So that is the reason, read newspapers, read previous year questions frequently, so that you know which kind of articles to pick up and make notes, right? So we'll end the discussion of this topic, coming to a very happy, or something that is a positive factor, or a happy news that had happened in the past, but a very good solution to many of the problems in the ground level in the current time. So here there's a tale of peace. Basically, this was an article that came in Sunday's Hindu magazine. So here we see that a story was, or an experience, real life experience was shared by Brigadier Advitya Madan. So he was a brigadier with Assam Rifles and has spent many years in the now conflicting Churchandpur district of Manipur. So he happens to share a few instances of his experience when he stayed there, and all of them are kind of filling our lives with hope, we must say. So he tells that when he went there as a brigadier, he found that his regiment was not having so much of equal treatment, or a kind of mixed system wasn't existing. So some barracks or some groups were seen to be dominated by Kukis, whereas some barracks were dominated by Sikh, whereas some barracks were dominated by meaties. So he changed this entire scene and created something called as a buddy system, for by which in every barrack, if there is a cookie, there would be a meaty person who would act as a buddy. So this system, he tells that over a period of few years had a great result, or he tells that in one of the attacks, the cookie and buddy meaties who were buddies here, one person saved the life of the other at the cost of putting his own life under risk. So all the conflict that we see in Manipur currently has many other realities in the ground level. Might be the issue was blown out of proportion by many political factors, or in the ground level we see that people do not have the hatred that is portrayed to be to a great extent. Basically the atmosphere is of fear rather than hatred here, right? So he also gave a very good example, which probably can be asked to you as a case study in your ethics paper as well, or let's say it's a very good example to say how people really follow ethics in their daily life. So this is aptly titled as a tale of sacrifice, because this Assam Rifles, in let's say in collaboration with a private NGO, tried to provide Jaipur legs, or let's say artificial walking devices, so to the people in the local areas who had leg issues or who couldn't walk normally. So after asking people to apply for these kind of legs, and after giving treatment to many, they were left with only six legs, that is six Jaipur legs or devices were left, but there were 12 people who had applied to get the six legs. And to make the situation more complicated, six of them were meaties, six of them were cookies. So how do we distinguish this leg now? If we give it to cookies, it would be impartial. If we give to meaties, that would be the same partiality. So he tells that let us try to take three people from cookies, three people from meaties, let both of them get the Jaipur leg to act them as a support system. To this, some cookies who are quite old in their age, somewhere around 50 to 60s, they come up and tell that we don't want the legs because our life is already lived. We have already seen the nuances of life. On the other hand, people here are quite young. They are the ones who require a leg replacement actually. So instead of us, you give all of these legs to the meaty population. So among listening to this, meaties who overheard the conversation told that no, that would be a denial of opportunity for cookies here. So not needed. If the old people are the ones who need a leg to be self-dependent, so give the leg to them. We would back out of the scheme. So listening to this whole conversation, Advitya Madan, who was listening and heading this, felt so impressed by this whole communication that he calls the NGO and asks them to arrange some 6 more legs on extra recommendation or some extra benefits, so that it actually serves the purpose of giving the legs to the people here. So the story tells that whatever happens in the ground level, we can judge them only based on the reality at the ground level. And today, all the factions and traumatic instances that have happened in Manipur was not the same years ago. So this example of sacrifice is something very easy, useful for us to mention in our answers. So do note them down under empathy, or how ethics in daily life makes the society a better place. So do write the answer. That's all for today's discussion. Thank you so much.